on what the Office for Low Emission Vehicles gets up to, and then run through some of the stuff we're working on at the moment. Most interestingly of all, I hope, some of the money that we've got available to help kickstart, not kickstart because it's already up and running very, very well in Ireland, but to get the market going for electric vehicles here. So, OLEV. This is us. We are a cross-Whitehall team taking staff from transport, business and energy into a consolidated team to really drive forward this agenda. I mean, our purpose in life is simple, and it is to see the electric vehicle market growing as quickly as we can and to make the UK a leader in this area. So we've got a number of priorities as an organisation, and they're shown on the slide here. We're putting £82 million of match funding into research and development for ultra-low emission vehicle technologies. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. We've got the consumer incentives, so the discounts that we've heard about from car and van purchases. Again, I'll tell you a bit more in a second. We've got a small team working on energy, because obviously there are big energy management grid implications from this agenda. So we're working away on that one as well. Infrastructure, excellent work here in Northern Ireland. Really can't sing the praises highly enough for what's going on here. And that's one of 8 projects that we've been involved with over the last couple of years. And those projects learned a lot of lessons from those. So there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago outlining a national programme for getting infrastructure out there on the back of the lessons learnt from the plugged-in places projects. I'll tell you a bit more about that as well. And then on the supply chain, so working with industry to make sure that we've got all the skills in place that we need. So, what is OLEV's commitment? What is it that we're doing? We've got the consumer incentive, so there is £300 million of this Parliament out there to lower the initial purchase cost for people buying these vehicles. £5,000 for a car, up to 25%, £8,000 for a van, up to 20%, and they are proving pretty popular, and I'll show you some stats in a second on uptake. Research and development, there's our £82 million and some of the programmes that we're involved in at the moment. What we're focusing on is what we call sticky technologies. So what is Britain, the UK, good at? And we're putting money into those sort of programmes through the Technology Strategy Board. It's drivetrain, it's batteries, across a number of different areas. On the infrastructure side, as we said, the Plugged-in Places project, and that's now morphed into the £37 million national infrastructure strategy, which I'll touch on. The one box on that slide that OLEV doesn't control is at the bottom right there. Our friends across the road at the Treasury look after that for us. And there's likely to be developments in the budget coming up later this month. So what I want to cover today, tell you a bit about where we're at on uptake of the consumer incentives, the plug-in grants and infrastructure. I'll take a vote when we get there on whether people are interested in hearing about hydrogen. We're involved in a government industry collaboration through the UK H2 Mobility Consortium. Happy to tell you about what's going on there. Some interesting stuff coming out. So I'll ask for a show of hands in a minute on whether you want me to cover that. New infrastructure measures, so our 37 million, and then we're going to be putting out a new ultra-low emission vehicle strategy in May. Give you a few ideas about that as well. So, plug-in grants. To date, 3,200 grants have gone out there for vans and cars. So that's, you can see the line at the line shows totals. The bars at the bottom are quarterly figures. So the blue bars show the cars. Very interestingly, consistent quarter-on-quarter growth for uptake of the grant for cars, which is very encouraging. Going forwards, we are working on the basis of the central forecast there, the orange line. But we've already heard that there are some new vehicles coming to market in 2013. I shan't name check any, we know what they are, but potentially some really important vehicles for this sector. So there's every likelihood that we'll find ourselves edging towards that upper projection and really seeing this market growing rapidly over the coming months. So that's on the grant side. On the infrastructure side, we've put in, by the end of 2012, almost 3,000 charge points have gone in across the UK, which is a really good news story. Vast majority publicly accessible. But the best thing, and the thing we've been most encouraged about, is the extent to which the private sector have picked this up, even without government involvement. And we have no way of double-checking the figures, but somewhere in the region of 5,000 charge points have gone in through pure private sector funding, which is obviously the long-term solution for the sector. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Now's the time for a show of hands. People interested in hearing about hydrogen? Okay, that's almost unanimous, apart from the table at the back there. You must know it more than me. So, hydrogen. UKH2 Mobility was set up a year or so back, involving Whitehall, car manufacturers, energy industry, and its purpose was to come up with a strategy to sort of test the feasibility and come up with a strategy for rolling out hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in the UK. The first phase of that work has just reported, and the findings were pretty positive, and I'll run through them in a second. What's going on now is the second phase, and that is building up the business case for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in the UK. And obviously the big question, as Quentin referred to earlier, infrastructure. You need hydrogen refueling stations. How are we going to pay for them? So phase one really the conclusions are around 4 areas. First off, consumers understand fuel cell electric vehicles. They buy into the concept. These vehicles will perform a certain function, and what we're likely to see is different vehicles serving different purposes. The car manufacturers were very honest with us this morning. For every person, plug-in electric vehicle, pure battery electric vehicle might not be the right answer. There are different vehicles out there for different purposes, and fuel cell vehicles will be really good in terms of range. You'll be up there with internal combustion engines from the get-go, basically. So people recognise this, but they were obviously concerned about the availability. Forgive the HRS in the second bullet there, hydrogen refueling stations. Concerns about the availability of infrastructure and being able to fill your tank up. In terms of demand, some pretty compelling numbers came out of the study as well. So around about 1.5 million fuel cell vehicles on the roads by 2030, and annual sales figures in the hundreds of thousands. Manufacturers have made public commitments to having these vehicles on the roads commercially in the UK by 2015. So it's something that is coming. Other conclusions around infrastructure. So hydrogen refueling stations with a network of just 65 stations, you could effectively serve the large metropolitan areas, the strong areas of demand, and the trunk road network. So you don't need to have a huge amount of infrastructure out there to make this a viable proposition. So one of the things the consortium will be looking at in this business case development phase at the moment is how do you fund 65 hydrogen refueling stations? So that work will be reporting shortly. But then in the longer term, looking out to 2030, when you've got serious sales, you'd be looking at a larger network, in excess of 1,000 hydrogen refuelling stations across the UK. Then the final set of conclusions from the first phase of work was around producing hydrogen. And there are clean, expensive ways of producing hydrogen, and there are less clean but cheaper ways of producing hydrogen. And where do you want to settle on that spectrum? With obvious implications for the greenness of a hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle. But the work has shown that you can have a realistic hydrogen production mix that still generates significant carbon savings over and above diesel vehicles going forward. So figures of reductions of up to 75% in carbon emissions. So that's hydrogen. The announcement on the 19th of February that the Secretary of State for Transport made was a national programme for infrastructure installation for plug-in electric vehicles. And this was over £37 million for the UK, and we got some pretty good coverage, some pretty fair coverage when that was announced. Some good reactions. So there are a number of packages in the announcement. They're different applicabilities to different areas of the UK, but the ones that are of most interest to us here today are the domestic charge point grant. So as Irene mentioned, ECAR has got the money for 13-14 for 100% installation costs of domestic charge points, but our offer will carry on after that through to the end of this Parliament. But we've benched it at 75%. A charge point generally costs £1,000 thereabouts, maybe slightly more depending on circumstances. So we'll offer up to 75%, capped at £1,000. And on our website, there's all the information you need to apply for that. It's a very straightforward process. We would expect dealers and others to help people through the process anyway. And we are currently accrediting charge point suppliers so that they are eligible for this program. And so you would ring up a charge point supplier on the accredited list. They would come around, quote you. You might ring up another. They quote you. You pick one. They would invoice you for the 25%, and you pay that over to the charge point supplier. Charge point supplier invoices us for the 75%. So it's a very straightforward process, and one we hope will lead to a significant increase in domestic charge points. And we've got 13 million available in the budget for that through to March 2015. The other one is the public sector charge point grant. So again, 75% available for public sector bodies. You know you're in the public sector if you're the subject of the Freedom of Information Act. A perk, you might say. So we've tried to draw the circle as wide as we can. There are always state aid issues, so we did have to draw the line as we have. And there are issues around us funding private sector workplaces, so we've had to draw the line as we have. But again, 75% available, and we've tried not to be too specific about where they go, what sort of charge points they are, whether they're only available to employees or whether they're available to the public as well. We ask you to make a strategic case to us, just a paragraph or two of text, demonstrate that partners are in place. But again, a very straightforward process, we hope, for getting these points put in place. There's an initial deadline rapidly coming up, 30th of April. That'll be the first round of decisions on applications. We've had several in already, so speak to me or get in touch with OLEV if you're interested in applying. if the money doesn't dry up, if the money isn't used up in that first round, there'll be future rounds in a rolling programme going forwards. Another thing that we've been funding is, as a couple of speakers have mentioned this morning, the Plugged-in Fleets initiative run by the Energy Saving Trust. And this has been a really useful bit of work where the Energy Savings Trust has sat down with 20 fleet operators, ranging from fleets with 3 vehicles up to 6,500, sat down with them and crunched the numbers with them, type of usage, whether they're back to base, mileage, driver structures, everything, and worked out whether electric vehicles, in all their many guises, pure battery electric, plug-in hybrids, range extenders, whether those sorts of vehicles could perform a useful function in their fleets. And some really important work has come out of those 20 case studies, and a number of the fleets have taken on electric vehicles since then. And we're talking about people like Network Rail, Boots, a number of councils, county councils. And what has happened is there's now a fairly detailed report up on the Energy Saving Trust website. So have a look at that if this is an agenda that interests you, because there's some really practical information, questions you need to ask yourself, information that will help you reach decisions available in that report. So, and Energy Savings Trust would be happy to speak to you if you had further questions on this area. Finally, just very quickly on our forthcoming ultra-low emission vehicle strategy. Some of you might be aware that back in 2011, the government published its first ULEV strategy, and that document there, Making the Connection. That document just looked at infrastructure rather than right across the whole agenda. And what we're really keen to do, speaking to people like yourselves, the message that has come across very strongly to us is that a document that sets out the government's commitment right across this agenda, demonstrates some leadership, provides some certainty for the longer term, would be a real boost to the industry and help fleet managers to when they're having difficult discussions with senior members in their organisation about whether this is just something that's an agenda that's coming and going, and help the car manufacturers to make their investment decisions. So we're really keen to get a really crunchy document out there that sets the government's position out clearly across all the issues, across infrastructure, across car grants. We'll touch on some of the fiscal stuff, just to provide that clarity, as much clarity as we can to the industry. There's a lot of strategies going on at the moment. The business departments are working on an automotive strategy, so we're very much involved with them in making sure that what the UK is doing across the piece in the auto sector is very much reflects the priorities that we have as a sector as well. So do keep your eye out for that. That'll be coming out end of May. And we're actually in a process at the moment of speaking to the industry to make sure that we have picked up all the points that are important to them. So we are an open door if people have points they want to make to us, either today to me or get in touch with the organisation, and we'll happily take those points away. Thank you very much.